So now that we've talked about what a method reference is, and I've talked through the different types, let's show an example of applying Java method references. And we'll look at a whole bunch of different examples as we go through the material. So this particular example can be found in the EX7 project in my FP folder in my Modern Java GitHub repository. So once again, we've got this array of names that are represented as strings, and we want to show how you can print them out in various ways. So we'll first start out by doing something very simple, doesn't really demonstrate method references. We just use system.out.println, and we convert the name array into a list using the list_of method. List_of is a factory method that returns a fixed-sized list backed by the array. And one of the consequences of using list_of is you can't actually modify the contents of that list. It's a read-only list. But for this particular case, we're just printing it, so it's perfectly fine if we can't modify it. Now let's take a look at how we can use method references in conjunction with Java's for each methods to print the values of an array. So here's the first way we're going to do it. We're going to take that name array, and we're going to convert it into something called a stream. Streams are an absolutely fascinating advanced feature in modern Java and modern functional programming. We're not going to spend time on them in this course a whole lot, but they're worth getting to know, and I've got lots of other material you can learn about streams if you're curious. So in this case, we use stream_of to convert the name array into a stream, and then for each element in the stream, we're going to pass in the print method as a method reference. So we say system.out::print, and that goes ahead and passes the print method to for each of the elements, and it prints out what you see down below. So it performs an action on each of the elements in the stream. So that's one way to do it. Here's another way to do it. This is in conjunction with Java collections, in this particular case, a list or an array list. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and make a read-only list from the name array. And then we're going to go ahead and use for each defined on list, which actually comes from the iterable interface that list inherits indirectly through collection, and go ahead and print out each element using the system.out::print method reference. So that's another way to print things out using the method reference mechanism, a different for each method in this case. A little side note, this is sort of a tangent, but it's worth mentioning briefly. The for each method defined on Java streams differs slightly from the for each method that is defined on a Java collection. And for each on a stream, the ordering is undefined, and this is really only important for parallel streams. Whereas for a collection, it's defined, and it basically is just the iterator order that would be used to iterate through the elements in the collection. So now let's take a quick tour and talk about applying these method references in case study EX7. Case study EX7 is found in this project in the FP folder in my Modern Java GitHub repository. So here we are in the EX7 project in my GitHub repository, and you can see that this is going to demonstrate how you can do method references. Before, we showed how to do lambda expressions and showed how that was more concise than doing things involving the use of anonymous inner classes. Now we're going to do more or less the same thing, except we're going to show a couple different ways of using method references. So let's take a look at these examples. Once again, we make a copy of this array, and we pass it in as a parameter because we're going to modify it. So here's the first example. You can see that we use the sort method, passing in the name array, and then passing in the compare to ignore case method reference from the string class. So that's a static method that's defined on string. And of course, it goes ahead and does the sort, ignoring the case. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the name array, and we're going to turn it into a stream. And then we're going to go ahead and print out each element in that stream, calling the print string method reference, which calls the print string method, which goes ahead and prints the output and puts appends a space basically at the end of each string. So that's one way to do things. Here's the other way to do things. We're going to, once again, sort everything using compare to ignore case as a method reference, just like we did before. And the difference here is now we're going to use list_of, passing in the name array, and then for each of the elements that come from that list, we're going to go ahead and once again pass in the print string method reference, which will turn around and call the print string method, which will go ahead and print the results. So with that as the background, let's go ahead and run the example. And you can see here it goes ahead and prints out the original array. And then we print out the results of basically sorting it. After we sort it, we print the results out in both of those different cases. So that gives you a good feeling for how you can use method references in practice. And again, it's quite easy to go back and forth between method references and lambda expressions and so on and so forth. You can see here, we can say replace method reference with lambda. So it'll go ahead and do that for you. But you can see that the compiler really wants you to use a method reference. And so that's a good thing to keep your eyes on when you're writing code. Whenever you write code and the compiler or the IDE automatically realizes it can simplify your code by replacing lambda expressions with method references, it's going to do so. So that's the end of that particular example.